a fantastic victory by England's women in the Euros. Football truly did come home. Game changer, the headline in many of the papers. Lionesses bring it home is one. Move over, fellas. It's home is the front of the Sun newspaper. Well, one woman I know is definitely going to be celebrating is former Sports Minister Tracey Crouch, who herself is a keen football player, indeed was a football coach for under-13s girls. Good morning to you, Tracey.
Good morning. You're rocking that flag, look.
Rocking my flag. Yeah, this flag has been to many a tournament over the years, that has to be said. I have to say, I mean, it is just so nice to have any happy news at all, is it not, these days? But this was a wonderful victory, and the celebration by the women, it was just so heartfelt, and so by the nation. You've been involved in women's football for many years. You've overseen that big report into how to review the game and help grassroots football for men and women. How significant is this win?
Well, first of all, let's just say, you can always rely on sport to cheer the nation. It doesn't matter what sport it is. We were just celebrating 10 years from the London Olympics, and you remember, Super Saturday and all those opportunities that really lifted the nation. So, I'm not surprised that actually everyone's feeling a bit good about things this morning, because, it was a phenomenal victory for the Lionesses. It hasn't happened overnight. It is something that has taken a long time to achieve. It is down to some incredible hard work from lots of people behind the scenes, people who aren't household names, who have fought and fought and fought to make women's football relevant, equal, recognised. And this was their victory as well last night. So I'm equally delighted for the people behind the scenes, who won't get the gongs, who won't get the plaudits, who won't, make it into the newspaper headlines, but actually really deserve their hands on that trophy as well.
Oh, absolutely. And we've learned, haven't we? I mean, whether it comes to the football or the Olympics, that actually what goes on behind the scenes often for years to come can play such a crucial role. Well, there's no doubt at all also a crucial role played by the coach, Serena Wiegman. Of course, she took the Dutch to glory but previously, and she was hired. She's obviously now on a nice big bonus, quite rightly, and clearly much loved by the women in the team. Let's have a little look at what happened at the post-match press conference. Normally, as you'll know, fairly dull, staid affairs. Journalists trying to get their story, get their quotes, and there was a slight interruption. Let's have a little look and a little listen to what happened.
Isn't it character and heart and motivation as well?
For those listening rather than watching, basically the entire squad came on in, running in, singing and dancing, jumping on the desk where the newspapers being there, seeing them having a great time, and then marched back out again. I mean, the joy of the joy that they had in their victory was just fantastic to watch, wasn't it?
It was pure. It was absolutely just, untold happiness, and I just think that they worked really hard for that victory. Look, I'm involved in football, but I'm not an expert pundit, but I can tell you that technically they played really well. They were up against a really strong German team, a team that is higher than England in FIFA rankings, a team that will go into the World Cup next year as presumably favourites. So actually they deserved that victory. It was gritty. It was hard fought. At times it was phenomenally skillful and talented. The goals were amazing. There's been a lot of criticism about goalkeeping in women's football for many years, previously, but we saw some, good keeping throughout the tournament, particularly by our keeper. And I just think that actually you've got game changers as a headline in many of the newspapers today. And I really think that it's not just about changing the game, but it's changing attitudes towards the game. And men who have, been sniding from the sidelines, about girls and women playing football, hopefully this will just make them stop those type of comments.
I have to say, I've already seen that. I used to watch this Sky Sports show on a Saturday morning, and they used to do a bit on women's football. They say, or as we call it, live comedy. And that attitude about women's football, there's no doubt at all. And again, a lot of people say, know much more than I do about football. You shouldn't compare. These are two different games. But an awful lot of men I know who are saying, actually, the level of the skill level is top notch. Yes, not as fast, not as powerful. And we get that because men and women have different bodies. But the skill level is there, and it doesn't mean that you can't enjoy it in the same way. Do you think that? I mean, we talk about game changer. How much this is going to be a game changer? Gabby Logan at the end of the broadcasting last night said, they think it's all over, but it's only just begun. It's only just started. But that's all predicated on men and women, girls and boys, going to matches, supporting, watching on the TV. When people talk about, we need the money coming into the game and why are the women getting as much as the men? Because not enough people are watching.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of points in there. I mean, the first thing to say is that you're right. Women's and men's football is technically quite different, but actually it's just football in the same way that men and women's gymnastics is very different, but it's gymnastics. So I think that actually, we've got to park this, the sort of kind of differences. At the end of the day, it's a game of sport and it's being played by both men and women. And there are differences, but that doesn't make one better than the other. It just makes them different. Yeah. So I think that's the first thing to say. In terms of what happens next, there is so much that needs to happen next. It's not all doom and gloom, but it's not all glory as well. So, we need to make sure that we continue with this momentum that the Lionesses and others have achieved because of the Euros being hosted here. We are going to see some changes. The opening fixture of the Women's Super League is in 2-3 weeks. Well, no, September the 11th, I think it is. So a month's time. And it's being hosted at Tottenham Stadium. Spurs v Man United. So, many clubs still do play in on pitches that are not the main stadium, that are out in the sticks, but not always. Yeah. So, I think we do need to make sure that we continue that momentum. In terms of equal pay, it's not there yet. It happens elsewhere. Lewes Football Club, which is a lower league men's football team, pay the same wage for men as they do their female players. But you're not going to see that at Chelsea. You're not going to see that at Man.
And you shouldn't really. I mean, again, the wages are based on your star pulling power and what you can deliver in terms of the sponsorship, in terms of Champions League finals or whatever. I mean, that's the reality. Women football needs to get the viewers and the spectators and sponsorship. Then the money will flow from that.
Yeah, it will, and it will come. And we've already seen that. We've seen much better commitment from reporting, broadcasting of women's football than ever before. And that's been a journey. In 2010, when I came into Parliament, women's football results were not even being mentioned in the newspapers at all. They are now standard. You do have dedicated women's football shows. You are seeing, more coverage of the game. That in turn will lead to people going and watching the game, which will in turn lead to eyeballs and therefore sponsorship, and don't forget, actually the pink pound is really quite valuable, and so I do think that we are going to see growth in the game. We're not this, we've seen huge shift in the 12 years I've been in Parliament, advocating, championing women's sport. We've already seen that shift. This is going to catapult it into a stratosphere, but only if we really maximise and capitalise on that. If we think it's going to do it by itself, it won't happen. Yeah. So it needs to have everyone listening and taking note of what needs to be done and doing it now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's so important as well because, certainly I take my daughter to sports events. She loves her sport. Netball is her big game. That's because that's pretty much what you play when you're a girl at school. You don't even play football in a lot of schools. So that has got to change. But also just having role models, as much as they're going to have role models. So, I'd rather it was someone who actually did something, and achieved something rather than some silly random woman with collagen in her lips pouting and telling us how to put makeup on Instagram. Do you know what I mean? At least it's have role models for girls who've achieved something. Can I ask you that? I want to get into the politics. You are an MP. Keir Starmer tweeted last night, "The Lionesses, you've inspired a generation of women and girls. My daughter and her friends have strong, successful role models in sport. Because of you, the entire nation is so proud." All very well. Except this is a man who only a few weeks ago was, well, apparently unclear about what a woman actually was, and is one of the many people on the left and the right, people who do support self-ID for people to enter any women's spaces, including sports teams. FIFA are having a review right now of their rules, but they were planning to bring in new rules and guidelines, which mean that any man or woman could simply self-identify as the opposite sex, and then they would be eligible for the team. We need to know what a woman is to celebrate women's football, don't we?
I think we need to have a sensible debate on this matter. And actually what you've seen is many sports at international level really look very seriously at this moment and this issue. We saw it in cycling. And actually cycling has now sort of kind of, I think, banned transgender athletes from taking place. So has rugby at any level. So I do think that it is something that people were getting into a bit of a pickle about, and actually forgetting elements around fairness and physiological sort of kind of differences. So I do think sport is taking this seriously. It is a sensitive issue. It needs to be dealt with sensitively. But actually, I do think that we're going to end up in a happy medium place, I think, in the future. But it has to be discussed in a serious and a grown-up way, and recognise that there are lots of different sort of kind of, emotions around this issue. But I do think that, that if you take something like cycling, where there is a huge physiological difference, it is understandably exceptionally controversial.
Absolutely. Just finally, Tracey Crouch, former sports minister, what's your message to the Lionesses this morning? I'm assuming they're awake yet.
No, I mean, I hope they're not, right? Let's hope that they're enjoying their celebrations, because they really deserve it. We've faced however many decades of hurt, as the song goes, because we haven't had this senior level of success for England. So, congratulations to them, to the team, to the people that have been pioneers in this sport for many, many years, when it was banned at school like it was with me, and I just, I hope that we get to capitalise on this and just don't let us pass it by.
Absolutely. Tracey Crouch, really appreciate you joining us. Tory MP, former sports minister, and of course she led that government review into the governance of football, so on behalf of fans and spectators. So thank you very much indeed for joining us on that.